Hey guys, this is for psychology, and I'm going to go over the history of psychology. Um, the current textbook I have has history and research in the same chapter. I don't like that, so because it's so much for both, so this is just going to focus on the history of psychology. Um, and one of the main things I'm going to go over is just a lot of the people that were involved in psychology early on, and also the different branches, just very briefly. As far as the people involved in psychology, Wilhelm Wundt, it looks like it's Wilhelm Wundt, but it's German, so the W is pronounced as a V. But Wilhelm Wundt, he's considered the father of psychology, and he made the first psychology lab in Leipzig, Germany. So he's considered the father of psychology. Sorry, father of psychology. Um, some other people. William James, he was the first American psychologist, so he's the first one to get a degree in a PhD in psychology, and the first one to start practicing in the U.S. So he had a really big impact with as far as getting psychology started here in this country, and he was a functionalist, which they weren't in psychology. It was focused on as far as how behavior and mental abilities, help people adapt to their environment. And I guess really, before I go any further, I should mention what psychology is. That's my bad for not saying that first and foremost. But psychology, it's the study of the human mind and behavior, so it's focused on the individual. A lot of times when it comes to things we study the behavior, we pay more attention to the behavior but not the mental aspect, not the thoughts that go on, because obviously we can't read somebody's mind, or we can't open up somebody's head and see all the thoughts in there. But it's about both behavior and thoughts, so they're both very, very important. But I'll get back to uh, the people and the branches of psychology now. With psychoanalysis, that is, I'll say it's a very interesting type of theory when it comes to psychology. Um, what it does is it emphasizes unconscious thoughts and unconscious conflicts whenever it comes to the human mind. So, like for instance, like thoughts that might be down in your subconscious, like things that you might not necessarily say all the time or act on. It focuses on those things, and the person who invented psychoanalysis was Sigmund Freud, and it's weird. It's kind of funny, weird slash funny, because he really wasn't even a psychologist. That's not what he really did, but yet he had this huge impact in getting psychology started. Um, he's someone that's often criticized for his theories and also just how he was as a person. And when we get to other chapters, I'll be much more specific with that. Like whenever we get to the consciousness states of consciousness, or the dreams chapter, and also when we get to the personality chapter, I'll talk much more in depth about Freud. But just know he's the father of psychoanalysis, and he's not very well viewed by a lot of people. I personally like him. Do I agree with all of his theories? No. But if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have psychology. We wouldn't have had all these different branches of psychology to study from. So let's see. Next, we have behaviorism. What that does, excuse me, it focuses on behavior. It focuses on the outward aspect of people. So like I said, a lot of times we look at behavior and we kind of gloss over the mental aspect, the thoughts somebody has. That's not what behaviorism wants to do. And when it comes to behaviorism and studying something that's observable, John B. Watson was the founder of behaviorism, and somebody that's also well known with behaviorism is B.F. Skinner. And he was considered the father of radical behaviorism, took behaviorism in another direction. And he's also the creator of the Skinner box, which when we get to another chapter, chapter 6 on learning and conditioning, I'll mention that much more in depth. So you've got psychoanalysis, you have behaviorism, You have humanism or humanistic psychology, and it tries to focus on the much more positive aspects of humanity. You have, excuse me, the much more positive aspects of people. It tries to focus on making people better as far as helping them improve aspects of themselves and their lives. It's a much more positive branch of psychology than a lot of the other ones are, especially psychoanalytic or psychoanalysis. When it comes to humanism, there are a few people involved with that, but Abraham Maslow is the one that's most well known, and he's somebody that really focused on as far as how people try to make themselves better, and the idea that they have of the ideas they have and what they can do with that. So I'll talk more about him when we get to the motivation chapter, but just know that Abraham Maslow is associated with humanistic psychology. You also have cognitive psychology, whereas behaviorism, it focuses on observable behavior. Cognitive psychology focuses on the mind and the thought processes. As far as feelings go, and also problem solving. So it focuses on that aspect, and then not like the observable phenomena that we so easily see in people every single day. You have some other types of psychology as well, like biological psychology, where it focuses on the human biology, and as far as the different parts of the brain and the body and what they do, and I'll talk more about that in chapter 2 and also chapter 4. But when it comes to psychology, we usually have psychoanalysis, we have behaviorism, we have humanism, we have cognitive psychology, and we also have biological. Those are usually the main ones, although you could also throw Gestalt psychology in, which I'll talk about more in a later chapter. Whenever it comes to as far as psychology goes, and as far as the different types of jobs you can do, a lot of people think of psychology as just going through and counseling people, trying to solve people's problems. But that's not all it is. Counseling is one thing you can do, and you can specialize in things like marriage counseling or substance abuse counseling, different things like that. But that's not all you do. Let's see. You can also be a psychiatrist, whereas a counselor, they do counsel people through their problems and whatnot. Psychiatrists, they take on a more of a medicine approach. They go to medical school, and thus they can actually prescribe medication. So not only do they, have some background in psychology, they can also prescribe medication because of their medical degree. Whereas a psychologist or a counselor, they don't have a medical degree. And there's a lot of different things you can do with a psychology degree. Again, most people work in mental health or health sciences. Not quite half of people, whenever it comes to psychologists, licensed psychologists, but almost half of them do. A lot of people work in education or educational services. Some people work in management or administration. Some people work specifically in research. And there's other things that you can do as well. So with psychology, you can do a lot of different things. When it comes to people that are licensed psychologists, almost a third of them have their own private practice. Almost a third of them work with colleges or universities. We also see them work with hospitals and clinics, businesses, within schools. So when it comes to psychology, there's a lot, that you can do. You're not just set to as far as working with somebody, listening to somebody tell you all their problems and trying to figure that out for them. There's so much more you can do with psychology. So just keep that in mind if you ever decide, I might be interested in learning about this, or maybe interested in going into it. There's a lot you can do. I even considered at one point maybe going into sports psychology because I'm a big sports person. So that is something you can do. They have master's programs, and there are a few PhD programs with that as well. But that's all I'm going to go through as far as the history of psychology. There's a lot more I could do, but Those are the main things that I wanted to go over. And again, as far as like the people I mentioned, we'll get much more in depth into them whenever we get into later chapters. But I will see you guys later.